to The Real Bottom Line, the podcast for entrepreneurs that features other entrepreneurs so that we can potentially learn from them about how to grow our business, our wealth, or our business. Welcome, Crystal.
Welcome. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I am super excited to have you here. Yes, and so Crystal has a company that goes by the name Word Magic, which I love. And the genesis for this company was super long ago because you ghost wrote your first New York Times bestseller when you were 14 years old.
I did. That was a tongue twister when I hear other people say it. Absolutely. So yeah, I was 14. I was doing my high school internship, and the person I was doing my high school internship for didn't write any of her own stuff. So she was in the media, didn't write her own things at all. I did all of her research, all of her writing. And so when she was offered a book deal by a traditional publisher, she said yes, and then asked me verbally if I would do it. And because I didn't know any better, I said yes without a contract. Ooh, yeah. So ultimately, I ended up getting screwed over for that book. Did not get the return that I was expecting, the amount of money that I was offered, which, by the way, would be pennies for what I charge now. But
back then, when you're 14.
Listen, when you're 14, like I was dreaming of buying my first Lambo at that price, right? Like it's not a thing. But she ultimately declined paying me. It was a long, sordid story. But when she did that, her publisher thankfully noticed. They took notice and realized what had happened, and they took me under their wing. So my career was actually born out of getting screwed on a business deal. As you do at 14, because what did I know?
Yeah, right. Yes, I should definitely have my legal representation review the contract at 14.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my parents didn't even know that I wrote it until it all went sour. And then they found out when it soured because she had made a big deal about it because I had literally quit when it happened. I was like, I'm not working for you anymore. And she had gone to my guidance counselor and said, she can't quit. It's an internship and all this nonsense. And that's how it finally came out, what I had done and how I'd done it. And my parents ultimately ended up finding out. And they, of course, it's really funny. My parents didn't even bat an eyelash. They were like, of course she wrote a New York Times bestseller at 14. Of course she did. And of course she's not getting paid for it. She made sure that the NDA was in black and white on paper and legal, but she, of course, forgot to sign the part where she had to pay me for said work. So she claimed it was all part of my internship, and she gave me an opportunity and blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately turned around and decided, well, maybe I should pay her something. So she tried to pay me in dog food. So she attempted to pay me in literal kibble because I had a dog at the time, and, she wasn't going to pay me cash, but she would pay me in dog food.
Wow. And so when did you next write a book? Did that sour you on that for a while? And then you did other things before you circled back and be kind of into the writing game?
So it only soured me because I grew up in a time and place where, my family and everybody I knew said, oh my God, don't become a book writer. Don't become an author. You're going to end up broke, drunk, or in a bar, or all three. And none of those sounded like great ideas at 14, 15 years old to me. So I actually was kind of talked out of it, so to speak, by people just kind of being like, I wouldn't do that. Now, the traditional publisher had taken me under their wing and they were teaching me things. So I was learning in the background and still writing and still doing these books. I just didn't believe that I could make a full career out of it. So what I actually did was went to school, got a degree, ultimately went back for a second degree, got my master's. And in the interim of doing all of that, I decided that I was going to be an event planner because I was really good at it. So I actually, for 2 decades, publicly was only known as a professional wedding and event planner. And I would get hired to go all over the globe and plan these huge celebrations, football stadiums and backyard gardens and Tuscan hillsides and beautiful things. And that's who I was publicly, but privately I was writing New York Times bestsellers, and I had been since I was 14 years old.
Oh my goodness. Well, what was there a TSN turning point that made you say it's time? I'm no longer an event planner.
Oh God. Yeah. So like, it's funny. I did it for 2 decades, and 10 years before I actually left, I knew it was time. Right. Like so many of us, like I kept getting the nudges, like, you're not as passionate about this. This is old hat. Like it's not challenging you anymore. You know,
Yeah.
I could plan a wedding in my sleep for 5,000 people and literally not bat an eyelash. And, you know, there's only so many times a bride could show me a certain Pantone color of pink before my brain was like, can't. Um, so I knew that I should go, but to be honest with you, the money was so good.
Yeah.
And I had been so sick in my early 20s, I'd actually filed for bankruptcy. I'd been married, been divorced, done all this stuff, and then been terminally ill. And the money had always kept me afloat. Like weddings and events had always kept me afloat. And it was like my safety net. And it was really hard to give up my safety net. And what finally catalyzed it for me was I got remarried. I met and married my husband in a month. We've been together for about a year at the time. I was working on a contract for a company in Toronto, producing events for them, really big summits and huge events. And COVID happened. And during COVID, I was relegated to running events on Zoom, like so many of my lovely cohorts. I was thankfully still one of those chosen few who was still making, you know, six figures as an event planner, even during COVID.
Wow.
But one day I remember being on a Zoom call and literally looking at my boss and being like, we have to talk after this call. Because I just couldn't do it for one more single second. It just felt out of integrity to me to be paid six figures to run a Zoom call. Right?
Yeah.
I was like, I can't. And this is just like, it's not challenging. It's not interesting. I don't want to be on 50 Zoom calls a week. Like this just feels, you guys can and should be saving my income right now. And I need to go find something that's more challenging. So even in the face of COVID and my husband not working, because my husband worked in a field at the time that he couldn't work during COVID, I quit. It was like a random day in October, and I quit, and I walked out of my office and I looked at my husband and I was like, I think we need to have a talk. Right? Like, as you do.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about this. And he's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know, but I got the nudge that I'm supposed to go for a walk and then I'll let you know. And he's like, I don't get it. We'd been married for such a short period of time at this point that he was like, okay, crazy lady, like off you go on your little walk, have fun. So I went for a walk. We had a beautiful farm in Niagara on the Lake at the time, and I'd gone for this walk back through our peach garden. We had peach orchard, and I'd gone through the peaches, and I'd walked through a couple of vineyards, and I wandered back about 45 minutes later, and I was like, all right, genius, what's the plan? And I went, well, I'm going to send 7 emails. And he just looked at me like I had lost my freaking mind. He was like, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, I got this nudge. I'm supposed to send 7 emails. And he's like, to who? About what? And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm just supposed to come out of the writer's closet and tell people that I have this talent that they have no idea I have. And that's what I did. So I went to the 7 people I knew I could help. Being in events, obviously working with companies and people, I'd seen all their marketing. I'd help or I'd help them sell their tickets to events and things. So I knew who was struggling with their marketing and with their help. So instead of going and opening the door to like, by the way, I write books, I didn't start with that. I actually started with, I've been working in marketing and producing copy for events for 20 years.
Right.
I can do this and I can help you sell your events better. I can help you sell your product better. Whatever. So I started with copy. That's where it all began. Publicly, anyway, that's where it all began. And that was back in 2020. I went public. So I stopped running events in 2020. I started just doing copy. And I was still doing books as well, but I was still quiet about it. And then in 2022, when AI started to become really, really big, I I already saw the shift happening, even back in 2020 when I was there. I knew there was a shift moving into AI. I was ahead of the curve. I still am, and I love that. But I also know that there's value in human written content that AI cannot reproduce. And in my world, that's books,
Right.
right? Copy is something that while you can use AI for it, it's not ever going to replace a human. But books especially, I think now more than ever, there's this like yearning inside people to hear real people tell real stories about their lives that isn't created by a computer trying to mimic or recreate my voice. And so I went all in on ghostwriting, all in on book coaching, on book writing retreats, and really helping people tell their stories
Right.
in a more personal, human way without AI. Because to be honest with you, I think that's the next currency, right? Like everybody thinks it's crypto. I don't think it's crypto. I think it's humans. I think humans are the currency. Human heart, human brain power, human emotion. I think that's really the currency, and that's the trend that I'm seeing. And writing books with people is more fulfilling now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I'm 43. I started at 14. I find it more fulfilling now than I did back at 14. At 14, it was novel. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a plan. I just wrote. Now I know the industry and I know what I'm looking for and I know what I'm trying to create. And bringing the humanity and sharing the stories that, everybody has a story. Not everybody should write them. I believe that, for the record. There are people who should not write their stories. Don't vicariously traumatize the crap out of people. It's not okay. But there are some incredible stories that deserve to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And a traditional publisher isn't necessarily going to pick them up.
Right.
And tell those stories, but those stories really do need to be told. And there are some incredible books coming out there. There's also some incredible crap coming out because AI will write you a book. So, but I think that we're smart enough now to recognize when something's been written by a computer or when something's been written by a human. And the way that you know that is simply you tune into you. Humanity reverberates at a different frequency than a computer.
Mm-hmm.
I know when something has been written by a computer or when something has been written by a human because it reverberates in my body, in my soul, at a different level. I can relate to it on a different level. And so I think there's always going to be a need for that. And I think the writers that are going to survive in the coming days, weeks, months, years are the ones who are unequivocally equipped to tap into emotion, deal with emotion, understand emotion, and know how to evoke it in others.
Would you say that feeling you get, if we're not as in tune with ourselves as you are, is it just that little twinge in our belly that says, or something, or not feeling a connection, or like, how might I know that that's twinging for me?
The easiest way and the way that I would describe it most often is if you've been on social media and you're reading somebody's post and your eyes are starting to glaze over a little bit, or they're using 8,000 emojis, because for some reason AI thinks that it requires 8,000 emojis to create a social media post. Those are ways, like little nudges to you that something's not connecting. And listen, as a professional writer, I have, pardon my language here, but fucked around and found out when it comes to AI because I wanted to see and prove to myself that it legitimately was a thing. So I have made social media posts using AI. I have trained it in components of my voice. I have showed it my writing. I have given it glimpses of how I write. I've asked it to write like me. And I have posted it. Those posts never do as well as when I handwrite it my damn self. And I post it. Because again, there's just a vibrancy and a frequency that I think that a computer cannot quite engage and learn. And guys, I have hundreds of thousands of pages of documents that I have written that I have trained it on my voice. I'm not a fly-by-nighter. I'm not somebody who scribbles in a journal once a week and goes, yeah, I wrote that. I literally write daily. And so I have trained it on a lot of work to get it to understand my voice, and it still does not capture me. If I'm training it to sound like me and it still does not capture me, What is it doing it for somebody else who's using it for the first time and goes, oh yeah, I'm just going to plug that in. That'll work. We know. And I think you're right. I think it is that little nudge, that little feeling in the pit of your stomach. If you glaze over, if you're just like, whatever, if it feels too salesy, sometimes that's also another nudge. If it doesn't have any backstory to it, AI can't give you backstory, my friends, because it didn't live your damn life. It doesn't know the damn backstory. It can't, right? Like, I have this post that's been sitting in my head for a couple days because I went to the gym, for example, 2 days ago. It was 4:30 in the morning because I could not sleep. And I met this man who was super smelly, blasting music so loud I thought my eardrums were going to burst, and was just like angry lifting. And I was like, this man just went through a breakup for fucking sure. Like, I am so sure of it. Like, he has anger breakup working out. Like, he's just pumping iron. Like, his
He's got to get
biceps
the revenge body, Crystal.
Yeah, like his biceps are going to burst if he lifts another pound. And I was sitting there going, this is the power of humanity, though, because I can witness that and understand what he's probably going through and feel empathy for him.
Right.
And what did it do? Instead of turning off his music, I turned it down a touch because, like, girl don't want to go deaf in the gym. So we did turn it down just a touch, but I left the loud, angry music because it was doing something for him. I was allowed to feel empathetic. When he left, for the record, I threw on like Bruno Mars and had a little dance party for myself. But like, I could empathize and also go, congratulations for choosing something, like getting the revenge body instead of going to drugs or alcohol or some other shitty coping mechanism. And I understand it's a crap time of year for any of that to happen, whatever's going on with you, my friend. So I'm going to let you have that moment. But it reminded me to be graceful for myself too, right? I actually found, because I have not been enjoying my workouts the last little while, let's be real. But I actually found grace for myself by finding grace for him. And I was like, that in itself is a post, right?
Yeah.
I could tell the story of this human who comes in angry, and the empathy that I was able to give them and let him find a little space for himself instead of just shutting him down and being like, hell no, we're not listening to that. Like, no, you don't get to walk around with your stinky body and like bulging biceps. Like, it's not a thing. I was able to find the empathy. That in itself is a post. My computer doesn't know I witnessed any of that. The computer wasn't at the gym with me. It wasn't there. It could not smell this man, let me tell you. Smell-o-vision does not exist. It could not smell this man. It could not possibly describe the wounded soldier human I was watching in front of me. But I myself can describe that to you and make you feel it.
Like, I'm feeling it right now. Like, I feel his pain, right?
You're like the angry, smelly, broken up dude who's getting his revenge body at the gym on a Sunday morning, by the way, at 4:30 a.m.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you mentioned earlier that not all stories need to go into book form.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How do you, when you're talking to someone who has a book idea, what's the process you lead them through to determine if it's a good idea?
It's interesting. So I love this because it's the real bottom line. And for me, it's literally like the bottom line is, what's the story you want to write? And the problem is most people are not succinct with knowing what they want to write. What they do is they take me on a bit of an emotional journey. This is why your computer can't write it, guys. Because you take me on a bit of an emotional journey. You give me the backstory. You tell me why you're writing it, who you're writing it for, what you think you want. And ultimately, once you've emptied out, once you've given me the bottom line on what you think you want to write, then I start asking questions like, but who's it for? Why now? Why this? Why is it important to you to tell this story? What value can you add to this story for somebody else?
Right.
How does this story become the yellow brick road? And those are the types of questions that I tend to get into. But most people get bogged down in this is the story. They're not thinking about the lesson. They're not thinking about the reader. And for me, having a great story is one component. Not thinking about your reader and having a plan for how they're going to experience that story is a totally different other problem.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of the culmination of both. I have a therapist on speed dial too, because I love y'all, but sometimes as a writer, I get told some of the craziest stories, and like without knowing, you're vicariously traumatizing the crap out of me so often. It happens all the time. And so if you're vicariously traumatizing me, somebody who is emotionally intelligent and aware and dealt with trauma, if you're vicariously traumatizing me by verbalizing this story, we cannot write that.
Mm.
We have to find a way to tell your story that doesn't traumatize humans. I don't believe in passing on our trauma to others. I believe in telling our story responsibly.
Mm-hmm.
We're telling our story, like being honest. I do not believe in traumatizing people.
You know,
I cannot write that
I've thought
in good
about books
conscience.
in the past, and I've thought about, what do I want to tell people? But I don't think I've come at it from the, how will this land? Like, how do I want them to feel or
Yeah.
do or act as a result of the story I'm telling?
And so many of us don't, right?
Yeah.
Because a story starts as an idea in our head. But the best stories told actually start with, they're all love letters to your reader.
Mm.
Every story you tell is, if you approach it as a love letter to your reader and some wisdom, some wit, some thing that you want to leave behind to the reader, that actually gives you a lot more ability to continue and to tell a great story, because our reader is looking, I mean, to be honest with you, it's always what's in it for me. And if a reader is not interested in your story, they're never going to read it.
Yeah.
You being, so I get a lot of people who are like, I'm nobody. And I'm quotationing nobody because nobody is nobody, right? Like we all are somebody. But people will be like, I'm a nobody, Crystal. Why does anybody want to listen to my story? I don't know. Do you have a really great story to tell? Is somebody going to learn from it? Is it going to make somebody laugh? Is it going to make somebody cry? Is it going to give somebody a realization about their own life that maybe they didn't have before? What, how are you going to leave the reader better than you found them?
I actually love that love letter to the reader. I think
Yeah.
that's a great exercise. So you
Yeah.
have kind of like three levels. You have, I'll write the book for you. I can coach you on the book. Here's a course on how to write a book, I think is what your three levels are. How should,
Kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
how should people self-select? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are the attributes of someone who can be coached versus someone who should have the book written for them?
I mean, people who want to have the book written for them, let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, it's people who are, you've got the financials to be able to do it.
Yep.
Let's start with the very basics, because it's not cheap to hire somebody to write your story.
Yeah.
So you have to have some financial fortitude to be able to afford it to start with. The second reason, or the second or third thing that I look for is it, do you not want to write it because you think you're a terrible writer?
Mm.
Or is it because you don't have the time to write it?
Two different things.
Different reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like most people think that they're a bad writer. I gotta tell you, I've only come across a couple really bad writers in my world. Most of us have some skill when it comes to writing. You just take it as bad writing because comparatively, you're looking at something I wrote and going, "Oh, Crystal, I'm a terrible writer compared to you." Okay, cool. It's my job.
I
Wendy,
would be
you
very
held
concerned if you could write better than me and it's not your job.
correct. Like I should reconsider my job choice if you could like pen a New York Times bestseller on day one. Like, let's be real. Like that's a thing. And it's no different than like you specialize in something at your job, and I hope to goodness, and you've known me long enough now, I hope to goodness you would not expect me to be good at your job, because I'm not.
No,
Literally
never.
not good at your job, right? We all have a specialty. So if I was to come to you and be like, Wendy, like I'm terrible with my finances, you would laugh and go, okay, probably, cool. We can work on that, right?
Yep.
Like that's a thing. I do the same thing all the time with writing. It doesn't mean that I'm inept. It doesn't mean that I have no skill at doing accounting or looking at my books. It just means that it is not my comfort zone. It's not something I enjoy. It's not something I'm really, really good at.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I would hire somebody for. So um, those are kind of the things. If you know that you have a great book, you don't have the time, that's a different story,
Yeah.
right? Like, those are often people who've worked in their career path at least 5 years. They've proven whatever IP or wisdom they have exists. They've got a great backstory for it. They're generally very much public figures or involved in the community. They just physically don't have a lot of time to write.
Yeah.
Those are great candidates for ghostwriting.
Right.
Great candidates. You are going to have to spend time with me, for the record. You are still going to have to help with certain components of your book. It's not a like, hey, Crystal, can you go write this book about X? And we never talk. That doesn't work.
Yeah, just send the completed best-selling manuscript across my desk when you're done.
Yeah, I'll work on that. I'll send it to you. It's great. So those are the folks that are great for ghostwriting. Then we get into the folks that are book coaching. Book coaching students are people who they think they've got, like, they know they're a decent writer, or they think they're a good writer, but they don't have enough accountability for themselves to hold themselves to getting it done.
Right.
They might have picked it up and stopped and started this book 15 times between now and, the last 5 years. They struggle because they got it to a point and then they just got stuck. They don't know how to do it. Or they know within themselves that they want to put it on a timeline,
right,
and they want to do it fairly fast. And they're just like, I just need somebody to like guide that process. Those are great people to come into book coaching. You have to be coachable. So if you're somebody who's like, I am always right, you are a terrible candidate for book coaching because you will not be always right. You're not going to like me very much. I am stubborn as a mule and I'm opinionated as fuck. I love you all. That's what you're paying me for. And if you don't want to listen to me, you don't have to, but it seems like an awfully weird way to spend your money if you're not going to listen and do the things I'm recommending. But book coaching clients are amazing for that reason. And then the third level for me is actually something that I call creations, which are book writing retreats. And I have two different versions of them. One is like you've either just started your book and you're trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing, or two, you have no idea what you're doing, but you've always wanted to write a book. Those are great people to come to the first types of retreats. Those types, it's basically a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend where I teach you how to write a book. We put a strategy and a structure in place for the book that you're going to write, and you start writing your book and you're getting some feedback.
Nice.
So those are very intense learning sessions and workshopping with me as a professional writer. And a lot of those clients will continue on as book coaching clients afterwards. The second level is for the client who just can't sit down and finish the damn thing. So I literally call them finish your fucking book retreats. And those are for the client who literally has started and just like got it so far and then stopped. Like they can't seem to get past it. They're less teaching. I'm not teaching you so much. Like
you're cracking a whip.
I am cracking a whip. You're going to sit with me for a weekend and I'm going to crack the damn whip, and we're going to do one-on-one sessions. We're going to work through whatever the block is. And I have a whole bunch of skills at my disposal. Yeah. I'm a trained ENLP coach and a trained hypnotist. And, I've been a writer for pretty much my entire life. So I have tips and tools and tricks to get you past the block. But the goal is to get you past the block so that you can either finish it at the retreat with me. That's number one, what we're hoping for. And B, if you don't finish it, you're really bloody close. Yeah. Like you can see the finish line in sight. That's the goal. So those two types of retreats are great for people who are like, hey, they're starting out, they want to learn it all, but then they think they want to do it on their own, or they need more hand-holding of the process of writing, more so than actually doing it. Those are great for retreats. Or like I said, you've been writing the damn thing and you just need that dedicated, like, I need to sit down and just do it.
Right.
In which case, come to the finish my fucking book retreats, because those are my faves. I have so much fun at those retreats. Like, I cook for you, we laugh, we joke, and sometimes I crack a whip and tell you to stop procrastinating and go write your damn book.
That's hilarious.
Wonderful.
So, question for you, if we go back up a little bit, are books still good marketing tools? Like if you're a business owner contemplating a book, what percentage of them are doing it because they have this, the story is they want to just get it out versus I don't want to get it out, but I also want to use it as a way to attract ideal clients?
So I would say 90% of my clients come because it's a marketing tool, right? Like when I publicly am known as a copywriter, it's pretty hard to detach that from the marketing side of me, right? Yeah. So even before we start writing your book, even if it's your your life story that you're telling, I start it from a marketing standpoint and say, okay, let's go backwards for a second and look at who's the ideal reader. Why do they want to read this? Why does this book matter? Who's going to pick it up?
Yeah.
How are we going to sell it to them? Like, I always start with, my strategy always comes from a marketing component. So people who don't want to write a marketing book, I do work with them, but most of my clientele are marketing focused. In terms of, is it a good marketing deal? Yes, it's a long play.
Okay.
Having a book is not a short play for marketing, right? So some of us, in an average year, say you have a marketing budget and a marketing plan, you're going to do all these social media things. You might do ads. You're going to do all these things. A book can be part of that plan, but it's a bankable long-term marketing solution. It's not short-term. You're going to spend a bare minimum 3 months with me writing your book. By the time it goes to editing, layout, cover design, print, publish, the whole nine, you're probably talking 6 months.
Yeah.
We've done it in less. I've done it in 3. That's pretty impressive. But like for most humans, it's a 6-month process. So keep that in mind. So you've got 6 months of doing that. Then you've got to book launch it and run it. So now it's a marketing tool. It works really well for people who want to speak on stages, who want to use it as a marketing tool, even as a giveaway to their clients, as a way to get to know them. I did this myself. The first and only book I actually wrote for myself was a marketing tool for my wedding planning business. So I wrote a book called Wedding Planner Problems, where I told the story of all of the things I went through while planning weddings, tied with some funny wedding stories, right? So my personal life, not my professional life, and I told the story and I give it away to clients. They would sit in my office and I say, look, after doing a sales call, I'd say, look, I'm going to send you a copy of my book. I really want you to have a read through. If you still love me at the end of the book, call me. Let's work together. And if you don't, that's cool too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want you to feel confident and comfortable.
So
and
not only a sales tool, but a qualification tool.
Yeah, pretty much. And I loved it for that purpose because it did qualify people. When they showed up on my doorstep, they knew who they were getting.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't hiding behind anything. I also gave them a lot of the magic of how we, all of the behind the scenes juiciness that we don't typically share, right? Like there's one story inside of that book that makes me laugh every single time. It was a wedding on an island that I did. And I actually flew my best friend in, who also happened to be a wedding planner, to help me with it because it was so crazy. But like, we navigated not having enough power, a torrential rainstorm, a broken down vehicle, actually 2 broken down vehicles, serving lobster in a field. Like, we navigated so much stuff that the idea is it built confidence in my clients because they're like, holy crap, when faced with insurmountable obstacles, this bitch gets it done. Like,
yeah,
she got it done. Yeah. Like, it was good, right? So it was a great selling feature. If I was to write a book now about this business, I would probably write something around the creative process and how creativity changes and adapts and grows, and all of the tools that we have at our disposal to unlock it. But really, it's not about unlocking it. It's about just opening up to it.
It's already there.
It's already there. You don't have to unlock it. It's not like you're not creative and then you suddenly are creative. We're all creative. We're all just creative in different ways. And one of my favorite ways to unlock it at the holidays, oddly enough, is baking. Like, if I'm feeling stuck sitting at my desk, I will sometimes get up and make cookies. Not great for your waistline, y'all. Just saying. But it absolutely helps because the action, the movement helps me. The reason you see me killing it in the gym every day, yeah, you're welcome. If you're on my social feed, you're going to see my butt at the gym working out every day. The reason I do that is because the more I exhaust my body, the more it allows my brain to take over.
Right.
When my body's not exhausted, I'm like anxious and fidgety and I can't tap in and just hear my brain. My ADHD needs to be physically exhausted so that mentally my brain can now take over. So I start to unlock it. Again, the tool is, how do I market that? So the reason I would market that is because, why do you come to a book coach? Why do you come to a ghostwriter? Because you feel like you can't unlock your creativity.
Right.
And I'm telling you, it's been there the whole bloody time.
I'm just going to show you where the door is.
Yep, literally.
That's
Here's the door.
Question for you. I see people sometimes struggle with publisher versus self-publishing. Do you weigh in on that in any way?
Yeah. So I mean, I got my start obviously in trad publishers, which is great. So the big five are amazing. And I have seen traditional publishing change a lot over the course of my career. And now I'm not such a big fan of trad publishers. I'm actually a big fan of hybrid publishers and self-publishing. The reason being primarily that traditional publishers have realized that the real money isn't just in your books. The real money is in your wisdom and IP, and they want a piece of that cut.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not a big fan of producing a book and then wanting to go speak about it or create merch for it or sell it as a screenplay and then paying royalties to a trad publisher. It doesn't work for me. I'm not excited about that. I also don't like the process because you lose some creative control. The process can take way, way, way too long. A lot of people feel like an advance, which is what we typically are given. At advance, they feel like, yeah, I'm getting paid to write. No, sweetheart, you're not. What you're actually getting in is an advance, meaning money on the amount of sales that the book is estimated to sell. And until you make that back for the publishing company, you don't see another red penny. So they're just giving you an advance on what they already assume you're going to make. They're not actually paying you.
Right.
So that's a bit of a misnomer.
Yep.
And you're still highly expected to launch and sell your book yourself. They may offer a bit of help, but not a ton anymore. And distribution is really the only reason I would go trad publisher anymore. That, and to be fair, if you do say you want a New York Times bestseller, I love you. Go trad publisher. It is possible to have a New York Times bestseller as a hybrid or a self-published author. It is just really not likely. It's really uncommon to do that. So if you want to be a New York Times bestseller, your best option is trad publishing.
Does that still carry the same cachet as it used to?
I think it's always going to carry that cachet, right? Like, it's no different than, I have ghostwritten 4 New York Times bestsellers, even though I am under NDA that I cannot talk about who I wrote for or what I wrote. I still talk about the fact that I'm a 4 times New York Times bestselling ghostwriter. It has a different cachet than bestselling ghostwriter, aka Amazon. Right?
Yeah.
It has a different cachet. And I'm not slamming Amazon as a bestseller. Get it, guys. Get it. It's not that hard to get. If your book's coming out, you might as well become a bestseller on it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying no to it, but like the Wall Street Journal and some of these others they have a little more value to them in the publishing world than being an Amazon bestseller.
Gotcha.
Right? So it depends on what you want. Yeah. But do you need to be a New York Times bestseller to be successful? No. Do you need a lot of money to be a New York Times bestseller?
Yeah.
Yes. Pretty much. It's a money game,
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It's a money game.
I figure it's just another algorithm that you have to crack. And that algorithm costs money.
To a certain extent, yeah.
Not always.
They've never officially said this is exactly how you do it, for the record. So like nobody knows. We just know that there's some very basic things around, like you have to do it within a certain time period of your book launching. It's all about book sales, typically hardcover book sales. It does not count softcover book sales. So if you never produce a hardcover, congrats, you're also never going to be in the running. It's based on hardcover book sales, and it has to come from a variety of sources, meaning Barnes & Noble, Indigo and Chapters, Amazon, bookcheap.com, like all these things. So you have to have them from a variety of sources, which means that you can't just go spend $1 million of your money and buy them from Amazon and expect a New York Times bestseller. It does not work that way.
Yes.
People who have a name to themselves, they are famous in the world, they are well connected, they have affiliates, they're going to make a play for a New York Times bestseller and have a very high likelihood of getting it over somebody who does not.
Right.
So Jen Kem, for example, has a book coming out. I have no doubt she's going to go New York Times bestseller. Laura Belgray, when her book came out, New York Times bestseller. Lewis Howes. These are common names that we know and love. And so when they produce a book selling 10, 20, 30,000 copies, not such a big deal. Now, that said, independent publishers, hybrids, and self-publish, the average book, to be considered, a good number for that level is 5,000. So if you sell over 5,000 books as a self-published author or a hybrid author, you're doing really great. And to be considered really great in publishing, the number is still only between 10 and 20,000 books.
Interesting.
So it's really not like we're selling like $6.4 million or whatever. Like when we look at Atomic Habits and the number of books he sold, he's an anomaly.
Yeah.
Right? Michael Crichton, anomaly. Kathleen Hoover, anomaly.
James
right?
Patterson, anomaly.
James Patterson, anomaly. Like that is not common. So if you think that you're going to produce a book and sell 8 million copies, I love you and I'm excited and I want to do that with you. And don't peg your hopes on something that has a likelihood of not necessarily happening. I want you to dream big, but I also don't want you to like be upset when you only sell 10,000 or 20,000 copies. Like you're actually killing it. That's great. I'm excited for you.
Crystal, I could talk to you about this all day, and I feel like we've just started cracking the surface of some of these secrets about books and how to write them and all that kind of stuff. How do people get a hold of you if they'd like to just chat with you more?
Oh my gosh. So the easiest way is either Instagram. You can find me at write, WRITE, word magic, or writewordmagic.com is my website. Those are the two easiest ways to find me. And there's even a freebie. If you're interested in books, I have a bestseller blueprint for free on the front page of my website that you can grab that gives you literally my insider secrets, being in the industry since I was 14, of how the heck you become a bestseller.
Amazing.
So if you want that, grab it on the website.
That's awesome. I thank you so much for your time, Crystal. And I think the real bottom line here is humans' emotions are a currency.
Absolutely. 100%.
Thanks, Crystal.
That is the currency of the future. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Real Bottom Line. This show is produced by Black Star Wealth. Executive producer, Wendy Brookhouse. To learn more about the show or to contact us, go to blackstarwealth.com.